may the words of my mouth and the meditation of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Please be seated. I have really been looking forward to this celebration of the Feast of St. Francis. And as you know, I had to petition for special permission from the bishop to move a lesser feast and fast to the high feast of every week of our Lord's Day. And so this is a special occasion. And St. Francis is one of my very favorite saints, not just because I'm an animal lover, although many of you know that's certainly true, but because of St. Francis's teachings and prayers. St. Francis is remembered to have lived and taught peace and reconciliation, both among human beings and in the natural world, and with the natural world, with the environment. A kind of holistic unity that honors our incarnate world as God's own creation. So why do we celebrate the Feast of St. Francis with a blessing of the animals? St. Francis is remembered for, among other things, his dedication to preaching the gospel. And it is said that he preached to the birds of the air, and that they stopped and listened to him. And that once he convinced a wolf who was terrorizing a village, eating livestock and threatening children and smaller people, not to hurt the livestock anymore, but to just wait patiently outside people's doors and be fed by the villagers. It's remembered that the wolf lived out his days in harmony with the villagers, and that they all mourned. They were all enriched by that relationship, and they all mourned in his passing. Our pets bring out our gentlest selves, our tender, patient, kind, and loving sides. We come together to notice and bless these holy responses and our relationships with pets that inspire them, helping us to walk in love in God's creation. It's commonly said that St. Francis sent his brothers out to preach the gospel with these words: preach the gospel all the time, using words if necessary. While this quotation isn't actually found among St. Francis's writings, it is commonly remembered and attributed to him, and it is still consistent with St. Francis's commitment to walk in love as Christ loved us. And we remember St. Francis's example today, knowing that we preach the gospel in everything we do as much as in what we say. And we bless and give thanks for our pets, who remind us not only of our kinship with all creatures, but of our very best, kindest, and most tender selves as we care for them. Many of you know already that I'm a second career priest. I was a lawyer for 30 years and an active Episcopal layperson from childhood, but I've only been a priest for a really short time. And my story as a second career priest is kind of relevant to me and to the holiday, the Saints' Day we celebrate today. Because for a long time, the last 7 years of my practice, I was kind of secretly taking courses in divinity school one at a time. I say secretly because I don't think, really even told myself fully my hope that I would be able to go away to school and to train to become a priest, because that was the secret I was nurturing. And so during all of that time, I was taking these courses. And I was also very active at All Saints, my parish of, 35 years in Atlanta. I was on the vestry, I was the senior warden, and in that job, which I honestly thought was the best job I ever had, one of the projects we worked on was the Journey to Adulthood program, which is an education program and a formation program for young people ages, 6th grade through 12th grade. And as a part of that training program, the 10th graders went on a transformational journey. And in our case, they went to Rio de Janeiro, which is our companion diocese, Atlanta's companion diocese. And so I was the youth liaison for the vestry. And it was my job to work through all of the fears and anxieties of my other fellow parents. We raised our kids together in the church, and And these were our firstborns. And so as you imagine, there was a whole lot of hovering going on. And as an interesting note, Journey to Adulthood as a program was created by our very own Linda Grants, who just retired as the canon to the ordinary of this diocese. Jerry's and my son Judson was in that first class, and so I had skin in the game, as they say. And I was doing all of these things, and it was just an amazing program. And so when they got down to Rio, they were blogging about the program every day, and we were all amazed, reading the amazing insights that our kids had, and beauty, the unexpected beauty and insight of how they expressed their observations. And we fast forward 3 years, and we created a transformational journey for adults and those who had planned and gone on that first, or maybe planned for their kids to go on that first one. I went with a group from All Saints to Rio. I happened to be taking Franciscan spirituality secretly, as I mentioned before, taking Franciscan spirituality at the time. But as I mentioned, I wasn't ready to tell everybody yet that I hoped to become a priest. I would get up early every morning and sneak out on the terrace so I wouldn't wake up my roommate before her alarm went off. She was another mom in the program. And I'd go out and drink coffee and read. And in one of those fascinating coincidences that always seem to happen, where God is involved, I quickly learned that St. Francis is the patron saint of Brazil. Just like when I grew up in northern New York State, where every other yard had the Virgin Mary inside a half-buried bathtub, painted blue on the inside with a spotlight out front. You know what I'm talking about, right? There was St. Francis in every yard. He inspired the faith and inspired the imaginations of the Brazilians in a way, the theological imaginations that was very significant and meaningful to them. And there were shrines to St. Francis everywhere. And I think you can see, I'll get down it so you can see it, but I bought this piece of folk art in Brazil, in Rio. Actually, I bought this in Metropolis. But it's a picture of St. Francis, a painting of St. Francis on a board, and it shows St. Francis in that famous memory of preaching to the birds in the air when they come and gather around him. And they're all here now. Please don't anybody tell Bishop Neisler that I've got an icon of a saint in the church, because this is folk art, right? It's not an icon of a saint. But in any case, that was a huge part of their theology and their spirituality. And as I came to understand, St. Francis's emphasis on the incarnate world and on teaching of the glory of the incarnate world and walking in harmony and kinship with all of humanity, as well as the animal world and the environment, has special meaning for Brazil. I also had an experience there that taught me the meaning to me, was present and relevant for me about where I stand in the world. It was 2010, and Brazil was in the quarterfinals of the World Cup. And Brazil was playing, but not at home, and there were giant TV screens set up all over the beach. And so our group planned to go down to Copacabana from where we were and to watch the America's Cup. Now, some of you who know me know that I'm awful at sports, and I do well if I'm remembering which shape ball goes with which game. But if I try to even remember the names of teams, I usually get the wrong sport assigned to them. But so I looked at it all, and our group would watch the game on the beach, and everybody was out there. Everybody in Brazil, I think, was on Copacabana Beach watching the game, and they were all in bathing suits, Brazilian bathing suits. And so even because my attempts at faking it with sports are not really all that good, I started walking. And I started walking from the beach, and I'd take loops through downtown Rio. And it was amazing. The streets were vacant. Nobody was there. Everybody was inside restaurants and shops and inside bars crowded around TV screens. And so after a minute or so of walking, I'd seen all of this and I think, oh, everybody's having so much fun, isn't this great? There was a woman and she invited me to come sit with her. And I said, I don't want to bother you. You have your customers inside. And she said, no, they're all inside watching sports. You come sit with me. So I did. And it was one of those magic moments that will stay with me forever. She was a woman of about my age. She was a lawyer. And she had nurtured a secret dream. She had retired from her law practice, also working with local governments in finance, like I did. And she was working as a waitress while she was going back to school to study psychology and social work so that she could change what she was doing and refocus it so that she could help the many people who were dislocated in Brazil, who were having to move away from their agricultural lives in the middle of the vast country to come to the city and find work and help them through the poverty they were facing there and the cultural adjustments of living in the city. And so that was what we learned about each other. And she was the first person, other than my family, that I told my secret to, because she had told me hers. Then she said something that really changed my understanding about who I was in the world, and our connectedness and our interdependence with each other and with God's creation. She said, you know, we're all watching you. I said, oh. And she said, you don't mean to be our models. We know that. But we watch you to know what to do and to how to respond. You are the world leaders. We look to you for that. Well, stunning, right? I had never considered that what I did personally, or how our choices as a nation would have any impact on others around the world. I was thinking about and noticing how things in the world affected me. That unexpected conversation and connection with someone walking a very similar path to mine showed me my own kinship with all of humanity and all of creation in the glory of God's incarnate world. When we celebrate the feast of St. Francis of Assisi, we celebrate our kinship with all of creation. God doesn't want us to ignore the world and think only of holy things as we conceive of them. God so loved the world that he gave us his only Son, so that we who believe in him will not perish, but have everlasting life. We're connected in God through Jesus, God's incarnate Son, with all of creation.